all clear from behind, and we go single core, push again.
Yeah, really struggling with the rear end. Any advice, some help? I've not had any, please.
Coming back. Just brake release into turn 2. Pull back at 16. One tenth in the third sector.
Especially wrist.
7 tenths in the second sector.
Is it possible that a single radio phrase has exposed Ferrari's true internal problem? What if I told you that this message not only left Hamilton eliminated, but also revealed the most worrying fracture of the current paddock? Pay attention, because what you are going to listen is not just a frustration. It is a warning. From Friday's free training, the narrative seemed written for scarlet redemption. Hamilton led the second free practice with a time that was not only the best of the day, but also imposed on everyone with an almost symbolic authority. 1:41.293. Behind him, Charles Leclerc confirmed the rhythm of the SF25, and everything seemed aligned for a blow of authority. The car responded well, the aerodynamic balance was adapted to the layout of Baku, and the weather, although windy, did not present immediate threats. Ferrari arrived for the first time in 2025 as a favorite potential. But Baku does not forgive blind trust. The classification session was transformed into a chaotic labyrinth, marked by 6 red flags that cut the natural flow of fast laps. Each attempt became a coin thrown into the air. The track evolved at high speed, but so did errors. Each interruption redefined the strategy, and Ferrari, a team that has historically suffered to react quickly under pressure, was exposed again. This was the true trigger for collapse. While other teams adapted their exits and adjustments to the changing rhythm of the asphalt, Ferrari was discouraged. It wasn't just a matter of pure performance, it was a real-time decision-making problem. Hamilton, who is still in the process of internal adaptation to the Ferrari ecosystem, depended completely on the clarity of the wall to execute his key return in Q2. And that clarity never came. The most disturbing thing was to observe how the control narrative they had built until then was broken. The team that led the free practices blurred when it really mattered. The tactical decisions were taken with doubts, the exit times were not optimal, and the positioning on the track left Hamilton in traffic at critical moments. In a circuit where a tenth can separate the glory from the disaster, Ferrari chose badly, again and again. The sensation was not that of a team defeated by the rival speed, but by its own demons. Baku's collapse was not an accident. It was a direct consequence of an operational structure that, under pressure, continues to show cracks that are too visible for a team that aspires to titles. Hamilton, accustomed to a culture of millimeter precision in Mercedes, faced here the crudest version of strategic uncertainty. And that marked the tone of the rest of the classification. In modern Formula One, radio messages between pilot and engineer are not just exchanges of technical information. They are direct windows to the psychology of competition. They are the cracks that allow to see what really happens behind the helmets and cars. And in Baku, what we heard from Lewis Hamilton was more than a message. It was a revelation. "I'm struggling with the rear. Any advice? Please give me a hand." That phrase, thrown into the air in full chaos of the Q2, summarized the emotional, technical, and strategic state of the most successful pilot in the history of sport, caught in a situation that could not control. But the most powerful was not what Hamilton said. It was what he did not hear back. There was no immediate response. There was no concrete solution. There was no voice that offered direction or tranquility. Silence or doubt in the answer that came later weighed more than any mechanical error. And that, in the context of a qualifying session as unpredictable as Baku, was an unequivocal sign of disconnection. Hamilton is not a pilot who asks for help frequently. In his stage with Mercedes, even in his most complicated moments, he maintained iron emotional control. His radios were clear instructions, precise comments, or useful feedback. But Baku was different. Here there was a tone of emotional urgency that exposed an uncomfortable reality. There is no full confidence between Hamilton and his engineer, Riccardo Adami. That radio message was the pure expression of a pilot who still does not find his place in a structure that operates with different codes. Ferrari historically has been a more hierarchical team, less flexible in the race, more dependent on previous planning than on live adaptation. Hamilton comes from a system that prioritizes tactical agility and pilot's initiative. In Baku, that difference in cultures exploded. And the most alarming thing is that these types of situations are not resolved with an aerodynamic update. They are structural cracks that, if they are not addressed from the technical leadership of the team, become insurmountable barriers throughout the season. Baku was, in that sense, the most revealing point of the year, because it was not a track exit. It was not a mechanical breakage. It was a phrase that should not have been necessary, but that became the most powerful symbol of the moment Ferrari lives. And that phrase still resonates, not only in the garages of the rampant Cavallino, but in the perception that the paddock has of the Hamilton-Ferrari project. In Formula One, there are decisions that may seem small from outside, but, in context, define races, championships, and even legacies. During Q2, Ferrari chose to send Hamilton to track with soft tires, while several of its rivals, including pilots who would subsequently advance without complications to the Q3, did it with the average compound. At first glance, it might seem a reasonable strategy. Soft is the fastest tire on a return. But under the conditions offered by Baku's asphalt that afternoon with descent temperatures, crosswind and a lot of dust and secondary traces, the average compound not only offered more sustained performance, but greater stability to attack in critical sectors of the path. Ferrari knew it, and I knew in advance. In fact, Hamilton himself confirmed it in subsequent statements. The average tire was clearly faster. They told us that the difference was about 0.3. It felt much better and we should have used it in Q2. This statement, far from being a simple post-carrier comment, became an open sentence to the internal planning of the team. How is it possible that a team with the resources, data and Ferrari staff have not been able to anticipate this? The answer is in a chain of poorly chained decisions that began from Q1. Ferrari, seeking to ensure the pass of its two cars to the Q2 without risks, chose to use the middle compounds when other equipment, such as McLaren and Mercedes, intelligently cared for that set for more critical phases. That decision forced Hamilton to use soft in Q2, not by preference but for lack of viable alternative. These types of errors are not common in champions teams. They are typical of structures that have not yet managed to integrate real-time decision-making with a dynamic strategy. And the most serious is that it is not the first time that this happens to Ferrari. The team has dragged similar problems in previous seasons, especially under pressure, when conditions change minute by minute and adaptability becomes more valuable than any previous simulation. Hamilton, in that scenario, became a victim of a system that still operates with too many rigidities. In Mercedes, his old house, the real-time adjustment was almost a religion. If the conditions changed, the team adjusted. If the track evolution demanded it, the plan was modified. But in Baku, Ferrari was tied to a script that no longer served, and the result was a top pilot eliminated in an intermediate phase, knowing that he had rhythm for much more. This error not only cost Hamilton a potentially historical classification, his first pole with Ferrari, but also exposed a lack of strategic synchrony between the wall and the car. While the pilot felt that he had rhythm and asked for direction, the team responded with conservative decisions and without reaction to the obvious. And here a deep reflection arises. In Formula One, a team not only needs a good car. You need tactical intelligence, strategic vision, and, above all, courage to change the plan when the facts demand it. Ferrari, at least in Baku, showed no one of those three things. And that is a problem that goes beyond tires. It is an identity problem. These types of situations leave scars that are not cured with a single good career. It affects trust, break the security of the pilot in their decisions, and worst of all, deteriorates the credibility of the team before its own members. If Hamilton does not feel that he has total wall support, he will rightly begin to make decisions on his own, and that can only lead to more friction. The classification of the Azerbaijan 2025 Grand Prix will remain in memory, not for a historical pole or for a return record, but by a simple phrase that exposed a more uncomfortable truth than any result. There is a real fracture between Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. What seemed like a dream alliance between a legendary champion and the most iconic rash of motoring, today shows visible signs of wear, distrust, and disorder. But the story does not end here. This is not a conclusion, it is a break in a conflict that just begins to take shape. What happened in Baku was not a coincidence, but a tangible manifestation of a structural tension that, if not attended, can grow until it becomes irreversible. Ferrari has a historic opportunity with Hamilton, but also faces the real risk of wasting one of the most symbolic signings in the modern era of Formula One. The question is not whether they can make this project work. The question is whether they want to change enough to work. And now I invite you to reflect with me. What did you see on that Hamilton radio? Do you think it was a cry of frustration or a sign that he no longer trusts the team? Is it still possible to reverse this situation, or are we witnessing the repetition of a pattern that has sunk other champions in Maranello? In addition, if you are interested that we deepen Ferrari's repetitive strategic errors in recent years, or how Riccardo Adami is managing this relationship with Hamilton from pit wall, let me know. Leave me your opinion in the comments, subscribe if you have not yet done so.